Cheers. Thanks for having me on.
No worries, man. One of the first things I wanted to talk to you was about Everest, because I went to base camp this time last year, and when I was there, I remember getting to base camp, and that was pretty much enough for me. And I looked up when I was there, and I thought, why on earth would anyone want to go any further? What was the motivation behind that originally for you?
I think firstly having the opportunity, and secondly, everything that I've done in my life has always been about challenges. It's always been about adventure. Even joining the Special Forces was, about testing myself. It was about understanding what my body is capable of. And I think given the opportunity to go and climb Everest, the highest mountain in the world, it was an easy decision for me to make, to go and do it for all those reasons, that it tested me the right way. It gave me adventure. It gave me danger, which I enjoy. And also, I've got quite a lot of mountaineering experience and background. And I find when I'm in the mountains, that's my calm space. That's my head space. I enjoy being in the mountains for those reasons. And all those aspects just, led me to make that decision to go and climb it.
What was the preparation stage like? How long in advance were you prepping, training, acclimatizing, things like that?
So I've always climbed since I joined the regiment. I went away and trained to be a German military mountain guide. So I've got a lot of experience in the mountains throughout my life. But we actually ran a training package to do Everest. So we wanted to climb one 8,000 meter mountain prior to doing Everest. So we went to Manaslu, which is, I think off the top of my head, is the 8th highest. Might be wrong. It's around 8,156 meters. So that was kind of our initial testing phase. And if we could summit Manaslu, or at least get to 8,000 meters, then we'd be prepped for Everest. And we actually made a load of mistakes on Manaslu, which was really good for us climbing Everest, because we'd already made those mistakes prior on Manaslu. We didn't actually end up summiting on Manaslu. And that's probably an in-depth conversation itself, but we basically arrived late to the mountain. So a lot of people had already set off on the climb, and we hadn't. We failed to acclimatize appropriately, and we climbed after a heavy snowfall, which meant there was a high risk of avalanche. And so we kind of made all the mistakes early on in Manaslu. Hold my hand up, we weren't experts at that time, still aren't. And then as you get to Everest, the prep and acclimatization phase. So the expedition's roughly 6 weeks, and it's all about taking your time to acclimatize so that you can summit the mountain safely. You do that by climbing no more than around 500 meters per day, so that your body adjusts to it. But then, it's just about taking your time on Everest. It's not something that you can do quickly. It's a very slow process. In terms of preparation for actual Everest, I had the mountaineering skills already there. I think physically, I keep myself in a very good condition. I think just being fully rested before you actually attempt the climb is what I say to most people that want to do it, is, do all your fitness stuff, do all your mountaineering prep, but then say 2 weeks prior to you flying out to country, just have a period where you just eat loads of food, get loads of calories, stick some extra fat on, and just make sure that you turn up without an injury, because you lose so much weight, you lose so much muscle mass, and you need that extra fat, and you need to be healthy and in a good shape before you turn up.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced on that climb, maybe physically or even mentally? I'd add.
The first time that I summited Everest, it was I have to hold my hands up. It was like a really enjoyable experience, and in terms of challenges, we didn't really. It ran really smoothly. It was probably the smoothest expedition I've been on. I felt like really fit. I acclimatized really well. So did my climbing partner. Like felt amazing, even up until the point, you know, even summit day. Like I had so much energy, and some of the Sherpas turned. Well, my Sherpa turned around. I was just left on my own with my oxygen, and I felt really good inside. And I was, I was cruising at a good speed. I think the second expedition to Everest, totally different, and that was last year. And last year made it into the news, made it into the media quite a lot, just because you had you had roughly the average number of deaths, but you had a massive backlog. And I don't know if you saw the picture that was taken up on Hillary Step of the massive backlog of people. It was like a big human traffic jam. And that posed a lot of challenges in itself. You know, the mountain is dangerous, but you know, the people on Everest can be dangerous as well. There's a lot of, you know, inexperienced people. There's a lot of people that just have a lot of money and just go and climb it. I think, you know, they pose a danger. I was guiding a bigger group, so I had a group of around. It was overall 12 people, but I had 8, including myself. That posed probably the biggest challenge for me. Is when I'm on my own climbing one of those hills, like it's fine. It's just me on my own climbing. I don't have to worry about other people. If I'm in danger, it's just me in danger. But when I've got other people that I've got to look after, and you know, they've all got their own expectations of how they want to climb the mountain. They've all got their own experience, their own ideas. Trying to juggle that whilst trying to get them to the summit. And, you know, I always said to the lads, stick with me and I'll get you to the summit. And 3 of them stuck with me and we ended up on the summit. And the other lad didn't get there for various reasons, health reasons, other reasons. But I think trying to manage other people on the hill, I find is the biggest challenge for me. Physically and mentally, I'm fine with it.
You mentioned that second climb, and I mean, you said the first climb went so well, and most people, you know, if they manage to do something like, you know, climb Everest, that's enough for them. That satisfies them, especially given the success rate of something like that. So what on earth made you want to do it a second time? What was the motivation then?
Probably one of the biggest reasons was I had such a good time on it the first time. You know, it goes back to why I make my decisions, and a lot of it is about adventure. It's about challenge. You know, I think you mentioned on the questions, it's like not being content, and I'm one of the biggest. You know, that's one of my biggest things is like not being content with pretty much anything, and I've not yet realised whether it's a blessing or a curse, because it echoes in everything of not being content with, you know, whatever it is. I won't go into too much detail. But yeah, I think, you know, climbing that, you know, summit the first time, had such a great experience, and I get a lot out of it. I get a lot out of exposing myself to danger and adversity. I think a lot of people can get a lot of good out of exposing themselves to adversity. You know, there's a massive sense of reward standing on the summit of Everest. And for me, I think doing it the first time, and then you kind of, or I felt like my odds were narrowed going into it the second time. Simply just because, you know, I had it in my head that I was lucky the first time, everything went well. But to actually stand on the summit that second time, although it was a worse experience, kind of meant way more to me than standing on it the first time. I actually shed a little tear whilst I was at the top as well. So yeah, I guess it's just that, you know, that challenge, that adversity, and just not being content with doing it once.
Do you think that's an important thing for everyone to aspire to? Not in the sense that obviously not everyone's going to climb Everest, once, let alone twice, but maybe on their own scale, look for that sense of challenge and adventure in life.
Yeah, 100%. I actually feel like it's something that the world misses these days, because life is so easy right now. Well, not now, it's got a lot harder, but prior to all this, it was, life's very easy. It's one of the longest periods of peace and no war that we've known as historically. And I just feel like humans gain so much from putting themselves in some sort of adversity. And yeah, you're right, it's scalable, so it doesn't necessarily have to be climbing Mount Everest. It could be going for a career path that you see as too challenging for yourself, or entering a sport that you want to enter but you just don't have the confidence to do that. Those are all the adverse things, and I think personally I've got a lot of reward from putting myself in those adverse places. For example, joining the Special Forces, climbing Everest, climbing all these other expeditions. I get a lot of positivity from that.
Do you think that failure, or the prospect of failure, is something that people tend to fear too much, and maybe is something we should embrace?
Yeah, I think, the fear of failure is probably one of the biggest fears that everyone has. Personally, myself, I have it. It is a big fear for me. And it's difficult. Like we can sit here on this podcast and talk about, everyone should go out and just understand failure and understand what it feels like and get over it. It's very easy for us to say this and preach it, but it's very difficult for people to go and do. And all you can say is you won't understand the benefit of experiencing failure until you understand it and get over it. And some of those most important learning points in my life are where I have failed. For example, I mentioned Manaslu before. We made so much, we failed so much on some of the things that we did there, that actually when we went to do Everest, it was a breeze. At the time, like, I was beating myself up for all those mistakes that we made, because they were simple mountaineering mistakes. But actually in the long run, all those failures meant that Everest was way easier than I thought it was going to be.
Did you, just being in a place like that, and the people native to that area, did you learn anything or gain any perspective? Because if I scale it down to my experience, I remember walking through the villages out there and seeing these people in such poverty, and they were some of the happiest people in the world. Yeah,
definitely. Like you said, like, that's scalable though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So much choice of everything back here. They just live simply, and you're right. They are some of the happiest people in the world. But it's a testament to the fact that we don't need much in life. We get so much choice in the Western world, on mobile phones, like endless, box sets on Netflix. Amazon can deliver in less than 24 hours. It's like, even this, the COVID-19 thing that's going on now, it's like, I think the biggest message that I've taken away is just, how fast paced my life was before all this happened, and actually how nice, or how kind of, it's nice to now have that headspace to understand that I don't actually need much. I can buy my food, I can keep healthy, I can keep active. It's quite nice to see those people out there. And you say poverty, but it's not poverty, because that's how they live their life.
Yeah.
You just look at poverty to us because, we have 55-inch TVs and 8K is about to come online and stuff. So that's how they live their life. And it's the same anywhere you go in the world. Afghanistan was the same. It's the people there are happy and content with what they're doing, and they don't have much.
Yeah, I don't know if you. It's
a good message.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't know if you stopped there or not. But I remember getting that feeling of perspective. Do you know a place called Namche?
Namche, yeah.
Yeah, the bazaar. Oh, I could have lived there for the rest of my life, I think.
Hey, nice place, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Now you could just like walk up to the back and like you had a massive view of the valley. And
Yeah.
It's a nice place.
Moving on then, we've touched, you've mentioned your military career slightly. What drew you to that career, and what did you think, at least before you started, what did you think or hope to get out of it on a personal level?
So, when I joined the army, so I was 20 years old, joined the parachute regiment. Even when I first joined the army, I didn't want to go into, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I didn't want to just go into, say, a normal unit or just a standard unit. I wanted to kind of, as cliche as it sounds, join the best unit in the military, which was, the parachute regiment of the Marines. And at the time, it was a way up between those two. And, I think that echoes in, I was quite gifted when I went to the parachute regiment. That it was about the time that Afghanistan kicked off in 2006. Went over there and, involved in a lot of fighting. Pretty much every day we were going out and getting into scraps. Same with 2008, just not as intense. And I kind of enjoyed that, or again, I got a lot out of it. I enjoy visiting different countries. I enjoy going into some sort of, say it again, adverse areas or dangerous areas with the camaraderie of being in a close-knit team where everyone's thinking the same and everyone's looking out for each other. And it's that family unit going overseas and doing what the military does best. And I was attracted to that. I enjoyed that aspect of it, the whole package of it. And then it was, right, well, what's next? What's the next progression of how do I develop myself as a professional soldier, and how do I get the most out of this career that I'm in? And joining the SAS is that progression. And yeah, it was kind of a no-brainer to go on selection. And that was 10 years in the SAS. Came out last August. That was some of the best and highest and lowest times of my life.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it, with the summit in Everest twice, and now taking that military progression to the SAS and that feeling of not wanting to feel content. When you did come out of it,
it's exactly that. It's that not wanting to feel, not feeling content with what you've got at that time, and looking to, like, how can I better what I'm doing, or how can I develop more?
It's almost that danger of complacency. You hear a lot of athletes talk about this, say when they have a massive goal, or they've got a fight, or they want to win a championship or something. I think Tyson Fury talks about it well. When you finally achieve that goal and you don't move the goalposts at all, it's very easy to become complacent and then, lose any progression you had building up to that.
Yeah, that's true. And it's about not plateauing. I think that's another biggest fear of mine, is plateauing and just being stagnant. And I felt like that was, that's one of the reasons probably why I left the military at the time I did. Because I felt like I plateaued. You scored that goal and, everything started to just become normal and the same. And it was then, it's like not being content then and trying to look for what's next.
When you did come out of the military then, how have you managed to keep that feeling of progression now? Now you've come out of something like a situation like that and you're back to, normal life, so to speak. Where does that sense of not wanting to feel content go now? Where do you focus your energy on coming out?
It's hard, it's like leaving that kind of environment and going into a civilian environment. It's difficult for any man. The first thing that I missed was people, being around those, those tier one operators. So, the biggest thing for me is just trying to create that environment outside of the military as best I can. So, for now, I set up a clothing brand with 2 other ex-SBS lads, and we run that. So I've got that family unit there, that come up, that camaraderie shit. And then it's trying to push myself in different challenges. So, business was a challenge. When I summited the second Everest, that was when I'd left the military. Also managed to summit Manaslu the second time. Again, just trying to push myself in challenges that I can do. And then also just trying to keep a routine where my mind's active, whether it's education or physical health. Just push myself into new challenges and try and find that adversity. Even like the TV show, it's not normal for SF blokes to leave the Special Forces and then end up on Channel 4. It's not a natural progression. So again, just learning new skills and trying to push myself into things that I find uncomfortable, which is usually where I get the best reward from.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed one of your TV show colleagues before. I interviewed Ollie when his book came out, and we talked about, I wonder if you had the same experience when you came out of the military, because that is almost all you'd been up to that point in your life, and it's such an immersive career, and I'm assuming a lot of your identity is tied into being in the military. Did you struggle with your identity at all when you came out, because that's all you'd ever been?
Yeah, like massively.
Yeah.
You'd been, it was all part of, you like, I left the squadron, and the squadron's the main fighting force of the regiment, and you're surrounded by 30 to 40 like-minded men, all alpha males, all barking at a door to try and get in and shoot something. It's like you're surrounded by these kind of like A-stream kind of people, and then everyone's having banter, everyone's competing with each other. And I remember I signed off, and it was 6 weeks. So from the point that I signed off to leaving the military was 6 weeks. And I remember, like, I drove out of camp. I was like, oof, this is it. And the next week, I was sat in a flat that I was sharing with a girlfriend at the time in London, just on my own, wondering, like, what the hell, what am I doing? What am I doing, kind of thing. And you identify as that person that I was in the squadron, yet you're not there anymore. And that's a weird thing to go through. And I think most people that leave the military, or, you could even say, anything where you are at the top of your game, whether it's, Premiership footballers, Premiership rugby players, when you leave that thing that, I was Jay in the SAS, and you leave that now, I'm just a civilian. And, like, people still expect that you're like a special forces guy, but I'm just a civilian. And it takes a lot of getting used to. It probably took about 6 months to actually realize, like, not who I am, but I'm on this different path now, and I've got these different challenges and different people around me. It does take some adjusting, definitely.
What are some of the biggest lessons you learned throughout your career in the Special Forces? Maybe about yourself?
I think, being in something like the Special Forces, I think, I was just a normal kid from Preston. There's absolutely no difference between me and any other person coming out of Preston. I think the military in itself, like the 14 years that I spent in the parachute regiment in the SAS, like it's made me the person I am today. But the way it's done that is, through a lot of things. And I think discipline is one of the key things on this. And I always think about, all this mindset, all this motivation, like teamwork, all this kind of stuff. It all comes under discipline, and you subconsciously learn it in the military, because you have to learn it. When you go through your basic training, you have to iron your clothes, and you're wondering why am I ironing my clothes? But then that then reflects in combat. When you're told to carry out an order and you carry that order out, So like discipline being one of the main factors, and how important it is in life, and how important it is in my life now, just to have some form of structure, routine, and that all comes under discipline. All the motivation comes under discipline. And yeah, it's like, I think kind of what I learned about myself, it's always a tricky question, isn't it? To try and understand what you learned about yourself. You know, I think just humans in general, how resilient we are, not just myself personally, but in general, physically and mentally resilient, and how we're able to do things way beyond what we actually think we're capable of doing, physically and mentally. And it's just about applying discipline and having that motivation and understand what you're trying to achieve. You know, it's about that essentially, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned discipline. That was one of the main talking points I had with Ollie, because he said when he started out in the military, they almost taught him how to do everything he ever knew again from scratch, from like brushing his teeth to tying his shoes almost. And it does drill that sort of sense of, if you're going to do something, do it to your 100%. Is that something, or is that a trait you've carried with yourself since leaving?
Yeah, 100%. I'll carry that till I die. You know, I hold my hands up. I'm not perfect at it either. I don't wake up every morning, like fold my bed 100%, like iron my sheet. Like, I'm not 100% perfect, but I think, you know, having the discipline to, you know, be able to wake up when your alarm clock goes off. Yes, I make my bed. It's not perfect. You know, be able to have some sort of morning routine, whether it's physical exercise, whether it's a bit of meditation, whether it's a stretch, and just have the discipline to be able to set that routine so that I'm out the door at 8:30, I'm in the gym, I'm into work, I'm drinking enough water every day, I'm eating healthy food, I'm surrounding myself with healthy education, whether it's podcasts, whether it's books, you know, whether I'm making the correct choices in career, whether I'm, you know, exposing myself to challenges outside of that career, whether it's, you know, going and doing a half marathon, going and doing an ultra marathon. That all comes under that discipline that you learn when you're in the military. If you take that discipline away, I wouldn't be doing any of those things. I'd be sat on my arse watching Netflix series all day.
Yeah, you mentioned routine as well, which, you know, throughout interviewing, you know, about 100 people so far, that's one of the things a lot of the interviews come back to, is that sense of routine and habits. Is that some, you know, have you developed any habits that you can attribute to who you are? So say you mentioned reading, for example, exercise. Are you very habit driven?
Yeah, very habit driven. I think all those things that I mentioned before, health is very habit driven. You know, keeping in physical shape is very habit driven. Like education is very habit driven. Like all these things, it comes down to routine and forming those habits. And yeah, like I said before, it's like that's pretty much what I do. Like, get up in the morning, I have a morning routine. I've got all these habits. My physical exercise is habit. You know, even down to if I need to do some work on a computer, you know, turning your phone off and just having that headspace, you know, no distractions, to just be able to do, you know, 30 minutes to an hour of constant work. It's all down to forming those healthy habits.
You mentioned the way you educate yourself is important. What sort of content do you consume in that regard?
So mainly for me, it's books, audio books, a lot of podcasts. Like, I'm not very academic, like never was, probably the reason why I went in the military. So, you know, reading books takes a lot of effort for me.
Yeah.
I'm reading Mike Tyson's autobiography at the minute, probably not even a quarter of the way through, and I've been doing it for about 2 months. So audio books are easy just because I digest it when I'm cooking, when I'm driving. Same with podcasts. Yeah, I'm not very academic, but even like everything's a form of education, isn't it? For example, surfing, climbing, they're all forms of education. You learn something, whether you're learning it physically or mentally. And that's very important, to just keep up those habits of learning positive things in your life. And I think it's probably a habit of mine to just have that quest for knowledge, or that quest to want to be able to learn a new skill. Like at the minute I'm trying to learn the guitar. I'm absolutely dreadful at it, but I get a lot from seeing myself progress.
Yeah, I love that. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, and one of the questions that were sent in a lot, I posted in a fair amount of fan groups on Facebook asking people for questions, and this is the one that come up, apart from the about 50 messages I got from middle-aged women who clearly fancy you, right? I don't know if you know about that market, but it's quite big.
I get a few messages.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. No, one of the ones that came up a lot is what it takes mentally to be part of a role which requires such high pressure, danger, responsibility. One of the examples that crop up is the helicopter raid on the Taliban IED factory you've mentioned in interviews before. And have you taken any of those mental traits and sort of implemented into life post-military?
Yeah, I think you develop those traits whilst you're in.
Yeah.
Though it's hard to be able to stand here and say like, yeah, you need courage, you need commitment, you need all these things, because they're all things that you learn and develop over time. And if you take, for example, that helicopter raid, that was 8 years roughly into my military career. I've been involved in conflict that whole 8 years pretty much. Then when we're not involved in conflicts, we're training rigorously, especially in the special forces. That's pretty much all we do is train. So when it comes down to, say, that helicopter raid, we were 3 months into an operational tour in Afghanistan. This IED factory raid was one of many, and it was something that we were going out and doing most nights and sometimes days. So when it comes down to it, I always think of it as it's the same as, the guy sticking on his uniform and driving to the office. You're in that mind space now where this is you, and you're not feeling any fear when you're getting onto that helicopter. You're surrounded by a good team. Everyone works well. How everyone works as an individual, and like I said, you've no fear stepping onto that helicopter. You're flying to target, and you're mildly excited about what's about to happen, because that's your job role. That's what you do. Not saying that when the rounds start flying back, you don't feel fear. You still feel fear 100% when your life's thrown on the floor, kind of thing. But no, it's like, so I can't. The best advice I can give is, what it takes to carry out that helicopter raid in Afghanistan is a lot of discipline, a lot of practice, a lot of training, and a lot of exposure to, what it is you've got to look at what it is you want out of life. And if you want those attributes, then you need to start exposing yourself to what you see as adversity, or what you see as danger. It could be something as simple as that career choice, or asking a girl out on a date, or boy, or all those things that you see as difficult things. If you're scared of heights, you've got to expose yourself to heights. And that's the only way that you get in that headspace and get those attributes to be able to carry out those helicopter raids.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, that fear when, you said when someone's firing back at you, it's not a case of, can't always say it's just another day at the office. It is that, there is that fear. But when I think about resilience, how do you keep that focused mind in a situation like that, where it is, there's a high chance your life may be taken? How do you keep your mind on the task at hand rather than that sort of, I guess, fight or flight would be the thing there?
Again, for me, it comes down to training. And we've drilled this kind of stuff over and over and over again. and experience, the amount of experience and hours that we develop, going into these, blowing holes in walls and entering these buildings. It's like you become slightly desensitized to what's going on. And, it's like a boxer. He builds reactions to what's going on. Someone swings a jab, he understands he's got a slip. And it's almost like that when you're doing, assaulting a target. You've done it that many times, you've trained it and drilled it that many times that you understand what's going on. And like I said, you still feel fear, you still understand that. And the moment that you stop feeling fear, when you don't respect that fear aspect, that's when you can become complacent and die. And essentially, if you become complacent and get hit, you're essentially compromising that mission, because you're then a casualty. Everyone else in your team has to get that casualty out of there, and that slows everything down.
It reminds me of, I've interviewed a few American special forces guys on this podcast before, and one of them was talking to me about how he remains comfortable in chaos. And he says that through his training, they focused on things like breathing techniques and a way to slow the breathing down before, going into a firefight, essentially. Is that something you ever practiced at all? Things like that, like mindfulness or anything like that?
I think, I think that's all kind of new age stuff.
Yeah.
And I know the Americans are big into it. And generally what happens is the Americans will research a lot of that stuff, and then it'll come over to the UK shores. And I know kind of now that kind of stuff's being implemented a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of mindfulness, a lot of calming yourself down. When I was there, that was all a bit taboo, and it was like, mindfulness was still getting banded around kind of.
Yeah.
At that time, mindfulness was what, like, people dressing up in hemp clothing and Personally, I've been into meditation quite a lot. I get a lot from it, but it wasn't something that the special forces were using at that time. I think for us back then, like, humour's a big aspect for lads in the special forces. Really? Because you got a load of alpha males, they all take the mick out of each other, and it's you go out and do something, you go out and whack a target, and it's good to just have that humour aspect of, taking the mick out of each other. And I think that keeps the spirits up, and that calms everyone down, and just, almost just humorises like what's going on kind of thing, and just calms a lot of people down. Not that we train that, but yeah, I can imagine, breathing I use a lot of breathing techniques and that kind of stuff. I can imagine in combat or in any stressful situation, for example, a job interview or something like that, to being able to calm your physiology down is very helpful.
So is that something you practice now then? You mentioned meditation. Is that something you do, and what way do you practice that? Is it just quite in the simplest form, or?
So I started using Headspace about,
I
think it was about 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
When I was so we had a ski coach who was like really high on the German Olympic coaching team, and he was explaining to me how, because I'd heard of it, but again, it's a bit woo, Yeah. And he was explaining how they implement it for the Olympic ski team, trying to get that whole kind of mind-body connection with the skis. So I was like, right, I'll give it a try. I downloaded Headspace, and I gave it like 30 days, and for me, I get a lot of benefit from that. I'm not very structured with it, so I'll go for a week meditating every morning, and then probably drop it for a month, 2 months, and then pick it up again for a month, might drop it. At the minute, I'm using Calm app. I just do the 10 minutes. Find 10 minutes is enough for me, and then just try and implement that mindfulness. So after the meditation, I'll try and just keep mindful for as long as I can till that slips, and then I'll try and implement that during the day at some point. I get a lot of benefit from it. A lot of benefit from, you know, just anything, just headspace to stop your thoughts from wandering, and you know, you end up in that cycle of a lot of stuff going through your head at one time, and it just has the ability to just bring you back in the room.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's, I think sometimes it can just be as simple as that. And I think it can be, like you said, it can be really helpful, because I think there's a stigma about it where a lot of people, when they think about meditation, they think it's somehow tied into like religion, or, you know, all these, it doesn't have to be all these chanting and sitting in circles sort of thing. It can be just listening to an audio track for 5 minutes and focusing on your breath or something rather than thoughts.
Yeah, I noticed I started using it when I was climbing a lot. And if I was going to climb a hard route, just having the mindfulness, and I started noticing when I was climbing these hard routes, my breath had started to pick up, and I'd start, you know, start panting. And I noticed that if I just calmed my breath consciously, like I'd calm myself down on the route and be able to climb it a lot better. And it was just having these kind of realizations that I can calm myself down by just having a conscious effect on my breath, and that reflects to anything that we do.
As we start to wind down now, I have 3 questions left that we ask every guest. The first one is, are there any societal rules or societal norms that you love to break?
With all of them.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm quite a nonconformist. I heard it ages ago, was the saying, if you find yourself doing what everyone else is doing, you're doing the wrong thing. Yeah, it's kind of stuck in my head. You know, I think it's about, you know, we get very conditioned in life, don't we? You know, we've got parents that live together, that are married, and you know, you're raised in this family, you're told to go to school, you're told to be educated, you're told to go to college. You know, after college, you're going to get a job that you have to turn up to at 9 in the morning and leave at 5 in the afternoon. And for a lot of people, I'd imagine, definitely for me, that's not something that I want to not conform to in a rebellious way, but that's not my idea of a life or of happiness in my life. So I think it's about, for me, it's about understanding, like, you know, what do I enjoy? What makes me happy? Who do I want to work with? How do I want to work? How much money can I have a good life with? And trying to just, you know, look at those social norms, break them down, and just trying to make that fit my life. That's pretty much it.
You mentioned self-educating in books, and you did mention you don't read too many, but are there any books you've read so far that have had a substantial impact on you?
Yeah, I own more books than I read, weirdly.
Yeah, I think that's the case for most people, though.
I buy loads and just stick on the shelves.
Yeah.
There's a few. So Sapiens is probably the first one.
Yeah.
Had a big impact on me. I think understanding, like, why we are the people that we are today, and what we've been through historically to get us there, from kind of the complete start to now. And then the second one, The Planets, Brian Cox.
Okay.
Having that understanding of, for me, I'm a bit of a space geek, but having that understanding of, you know, how this whole Earth and solar system has formed, I think, you know, gives you a different perspective on life and makes you understand that, you know, we're very, what's the word? We're very insignificant in the whole grand scheme of things. When you know, we think that our lives are the most important things going, and actually we're just part of this whole, like, solar system, or even bigger, this galaxy. And then 2 other books which, you know, I recommend for anyone right now to read is, what's the first book? Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl, yeah.
And Primo Levi, If This Is a Man.
Okay.
Both about Auschwitz and the concentration camps. Both both Viktor Frankl and Primo Levi were prisoners in Auschwitz. Primo Levi documents the whole thing and tells stories, and then Viktor Frankl's a psychologist, and he goes into the psychology of it. I think for me, coming from like most of my life has been about people fighting each other and conflict, and just having an understanding of what we're capable of doing to each other. I think kind of every great leader or every person who poses to be a leader should read these books, because essentially, that's what it was. Time-wise, it was the blink of an eye. It was in our parents or grandparents' lifetimes. It's very recent, and it's a great understanding of what men are capable of doing, or what man's capable of doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because maybe 50% of the successful people I interview all recommend Man's Search for Meaning. So
really?
Yeah, it's probably our most recommended book, actually. So there we are.
I probably read that book and The Planets more than any other book. Probably done them about 4 times.
Oh wow. You're in the you're on the show Who Dares Wins. It seems almost a rite of passage for the staff on there to write their own book. Do you have any plans for that at all, or any? Do you have that as a goal at all?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Currently, just in negotiations to do one now. It should be on the shelves next January. It's not
fantastic.
Not going to be an autobiography though, but we're just coming up with the structure of it as we speak.
Amazing. Can't wait for that. My last question to you is, we've talked a lot about lessons and, messages that you've learned throughout your life. If you were to distill those and you had the chance to give one message or one lesson and impart it on every person on the planet, what would your message be?
I think you'd just be, don't be scared of things, and just don't be scared of putting yourself out there and exposing yourself to things that are difficult, because 9 times out of 10 there's a reason that your body doesn't want to, or your mind doesn't want to say yes to that certain thing, and it's trying to protect it. But essentially, it's, if you can say yes to whatever you need to, you'll get a lot of growth and benefit from that. I think also right now, it's this current situation going on, everyone thinks it's the end of the world kind of thing. I think just understanding that how resilient the human race is, the wars that we've been through, the famine, the plagues. I think at one stage, we'll get through this in the end, and we'll look back on these times as history. I think just to add on that, just to use this time wisely. We've been gifted all this time now where we're sat in our houses, and we think it's such a bad thing, but use this time to educate yourselves, stay fit, stay healthy, connect with family, connect with friends, and come out of this a better person.
Where can our listeners find you and connect with you on social media?
So mainly on Instagram, so J_Morton, and then I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm just in the middle of launching a website, so that should be up and running in the next couple of weeks. It should be jmortonofficial.com.
Cool. I'll link that in the description as well, because I'm sure that'll be out before this podcast is.
Awesome.
All right, man. Have a good day. Thank you very much.
Thanks for speaking to you.